Hey Bella. All right. This guitar lesson may not be as long in terms of length because we're gonna pretty much skip warm up. I'll go over what you need to warm up, but we're gonna skip warm up, and then obviously you can't ask questions, and it's harder for me to directly help you if you've got like hand positioning wrong, or maybe you've got like a super bent wrist. I can't help you in those areas directly this time. So it may be around like 25 minutes is what I'm guessing. But so this is the guitar lesson. Let's warm up. So you're gonna do spider walks. At first, do it without a metronome. If you can, add in a metronome. The app Soundbrenner, so that's sound and then BRENNER, is a really good app for a metronome. So do spider walk. And I would recommend doing it at the 5th fret. So where your index is starting on the 5th and going all the way up and then all the way back down. This is a new one. It's even I haven't done this one in a long time, but it gets difficult. And then doing the same thing on the 1st fret and then going back down. Remember, one finger at a time. Yeah, that's even difficult for me. I haven't done that one in a long time, but it's extremely good for building that dexterity. The next one is the alternate picking one. You can either use a metronome or not. Feel free to make it fun. Like, you can test out different places, holding down and fretting while you do this exercise. And so you can find different places to make it fun. And then last, as your warm-up, definitely make sure to warm up by playing through Gratitude, because you're gonna need to know how to finger pick for this lesson, this pattern specifically. And then you should have the finger picking pattern on your piece of paper from 2 weeks ago. We wrote it down. All right, and so let's get into the lesson. What we're gonna go over today is new chord shapes for chords in the key of G major. So you know these from Gratitude. So this is E minor, D major, C major, then back to G major. So there's obviously a lot of different places I could play that. I could play it I don't think that sounds particularly good, but there are a lot of different places that you can play those chords. Sorry, my bad. But we're gonna learn a super fun version today that's not difficult and doesn't require bar chords. And these chord shapes are used in songs like Blackbird, I think by Paul McCartney. Blackbird by Paul McCartney. They're used in songs like Chicken Tendies by Clinton Kane. That's actually where I first learned these chord shapes. And that's a song that I still play today. Super good, you should check it out. And then the song So Will I by Hillsong Worship is also, the guitar part is using these chord shapes. And so we're going to learn 2 versions of these chord shapes today. So 2 versions of a new version, or of new chords. And it sounds daunting, but it's super fun. There are basically only 2 hand shapes that you need to know. And so I'll demonstrate those. I'll demonstrate the easier version. My bad. I'll demonstrate the easier version with this chord. So this is a C major, which is that 4th chord in Gratitude. This is a different way to play C major. So you'll take your index finger and you'll put it on the 3rd fret of your 5th string. And then you'll take your ring finger or your pinky, it's up to you, but I'd recommend your pinky. And you'll put it on the 5th fret of your 2nd string. And so you might be like, this is only 2 notes. Most of our chords are at least triads. They have 3 notes. But these chord shapes, the 3rd note's actually your 3rd string. So the G string is your 3rd note. And so that's C major. And I want you to pay careful attention to the shape. So you've got your index finger planted on the root, if you notice, C major, but this is the C major chord. Your index finger is on the root of the chord. It's on the C note, and you can check that by just going on your 5th string, A sharp, B, C. And then if you go 2 frets up from that, so 1, 2, and then go to the 2nd string, that's where you put your next finger. And so in the key of G, I can use that same exact shape, not changing the positioning of my fingers at all. So just moving my hand, but not changing my fingers. I can play at least 3, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 3 chords in the key of G, just with the shape. And don't worry, you don't have to play that just yet. I was just demonstrating that this is a shape that you'll use, and you'll just slide it up and down the neck. But back to the C major version. The next version of a chord that we're going to learn is you take that same, hold on, okay, good. You take that same, it's a very similar shape, but we're going to learn it learning the E minor chord. So E minor is that 2nd chord in Gratitude. We're going to learn this version of it. So take your index finger and go up to the 7th fret of your 5th string. So that's an E for E minor. This is an E. And then I want you to just take your middle finger and put it on the 8th fret of your 2nd string. And then if you pluck your 5th, 3rd, and 2nd string, then you get the E minor chord. And those are the only 2 shapes that you need. And so I'm going to teach you, and you can write these down if you want, or just re-watch this part of the video a couple times, but I'm going to teach you just where to move those shapes. And so for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to call the C major one the C major shape. I'm just going to call it the major shape. And then for the E minor shape, I'm just going to call it the minor shape. And then when I say major shape on the 5th fret, what I'm talking about is you take that major shape and the root is going to be on the 5th fret. I say like minor shape on the 12th fret, that root, your index finger, is going to go on the 12th fret. And so I'll go ahead and teach you most of the positions that this can play in the key of G. So we'll start at the bottom. You have your G chord, and then going up, so the next note after G in the G major scale is A, and in this case it's A minor. So this might seem counterintuitive, but the next step is actually just putting your index finger on the 2nd string 1st fret, and then plucking your 5th, 3rd, and 2nd string. So that's actually an A minor 7, or just an A minor, which is in the key of G. That's an A minor chord, and you might be like, but that's not one of the shapes that we learned. Well, actually, your 5th string, imagine if you were pressing down an invisible fret right behind the 1st fret. That's the same shape. So that's the minor shape. Which makes sense because the 5th string is actually the root of your chord, A minor, and you're plucking an A. And so the next shape is still the minor shape, but it's kind of in between a G major and an E minor. So it's technically a G over B major, but you can think of it as either. You can think of it as like kind of a bright sounding minor or a mellow sounding major. Either way, for this, it kind of represents E minor. But so we've got G, then A minor, and then E minor, and then so that E minor shape is the minor shape starting on the 2nd fret, and then take the major shape and move it up to the 3rd fret, and that's what we've learned. That's C major. And then take your major shape and move it up to the 5th fret. And by the way, feel free to pluck the 5th, the 4th, the 3rd, and the 2nd strings. It may not be it'll always sound good. It may technically not be just a straight G major or a major. It may add some notes technically into the chord, but it'll sound good in the key of G. But anyway, this is a D major, which makes sense because if you have a C major on the 3rd fret and you move up to 1, 2, that's a D major, which is the 3rd chord in Gratitude. But back to this version of it, D major. And then go to your minor chord or minor shape and move it up to the 7th fret. You've learned this one. It was E minor. And then move it up one. And this is kind of an A. It's kind of an A minor. It's a really weird chord, but it doesn't show up in a lot of songs. But that's if you keep the minor shape from E minor and you move it up 2 frets, so to the 9th fret. Then take the major shape and move it up to the 10th fret. So major shape, 10th fret. And that's a G major. And then it just restarts. A minor, E minor, C major, D major, E minor 7, or E minor. And so what we can do is we can actually use this to play Gratitude. And so what you'll do is exactly the same finger picking pattern, but you'll only use the 4 inner strings. So that's the 5th, 4th, 3rd, and 2nd string. And you'll do your shapes. So this is G. You take the major shape and you put it on the 10th fret. what's the second chord in gratitude? It's E minor. So you'll go to your minor shape and go to E minor. So that's your index finger on the 7th fret. And then you go down 1 to D major, or sorry, I say down 1 because I'm really used to this, these chords, and so to me it's like going down 1 chord, but technically you go down 2 frets and use your major shape. So my index finger's on the 5th fret, and that's a D major. And then you take your index finger and you go down to the 3rd fret, and that's a C major, as we've learned. And then you go back up to G. And so altogether, that's going to sound like this. And feel free to slow down the video or rewind it as many times, but try to get this down. My bad. All right. And so there is one more version of these chords that I want to teach you. And so the reason, let's go back to our major shape, C major. And also, if this feels like a lot to learn, feel free to pause this part of the video and actually resume it next week. So we have 2 weeks in between lessons. Take this part of the video that was behind this point and use it for the first week, and then use this following part of the video for the second week. Split it up if you want. This is a lot to learn. So the next version of these same exact chords, but just slightly different, and they come in useful for different things and different songs, is you take your major. Let's start with the major shape. So for the major shape, let's just, for example, use C, but it doesn't matter. You could use G or you could use D major. But let's go to the major shape on the 3rd fret. So that's C major. And so it's your regular major shape, but add in your ring finger on the same fret as your pinky, but on your 4th string. So same fret as your pinky on your 4th string. And the reason I described it like that is so that you can move it around. So like you can go up here, and it's still, the correct way to describe where your ring finger goes is still the same fret as your pinky on the 4th string. And so this is another way to play that major shape, and it comes in handy for different things. Like the song Hillsong, or the song So Will I by Hillsong, uses this chord shape. This major chord shape. And so it comes in useful, or it comes in handy for different songs. The other thing that you'll learn over time is that the more notes that you fret, so the more notes that you're playing that are pushed down instead of just ringing out open, like that's ringing out open. But if I push it down, the more notes that you are pushing down that are in your chord, the more tight or closed it tends to feel, which sounds bad, but it can actually be useful. So a lot of jazz players like that sound. They like that tone. A lot of indie artists like that tone. It just depends on what you're trying to go for. So this chord is super useful for that, or this chord shape. So that's the major one, and you can use it for every major chord that I showed you with this shape. The simpler one, you just add your ring finger in there. And so now let's learn the modified minor shape. So take your minor shape. Let's just, for example, use E minor. Take your minor shape and then add your ring finger 1 fret up from your middle finger and on the 4th string as well. So actually, it looks a lot like your major shape. The only difference is instead of using your pinky, you're using your ring finger, or you're using your middle finger 1 fret down. So that's the modified version of the minor shape and major shape. And so there are 2 things that I want you to do. I want you to try to play Gratitude using these shapes. And remember that this is a YouTube video. If something ever seems super fast, you can physically slow it down. The other thing that I want you to do is there's one more technique that you're gonna learn. And it's called hybrid picking. Actually, let's start with string skipping. And so that's where you pick, but you're skipping strings. So it's not like maybe you play a scale and it's just 1 string and then you move on to the one right next to that, and then the one right next to that, and then the one. You actually skip strings. So you may start on your 5th string, and actually the next note that you play may be on your 2nd string. And so that's actually what the song So Will I by Hillsong Worship does. And that's your song of the next 2 weeks after you have mastered Gratitude. That's your song for the next 2 weeks is So Will I. It's technically simpler. Because this is all it is. So you start on C for 2 measures, and then E minor for 2 measures. You start on C for 2 measures, and then E minor for 1 measure, D major for 1 measure, and then it restarts, it loops again. And so the picking pattern is literally just the 5th string, I apologize, the 5th string, and then right after it, the 2nd string. And so for this song, I want you to use what's called string skipping. And so the best way to learn it, I have a bad habit of planting my finger when I do it. So my pinky is resting on the guitar. That's not a good habit. The best habit is to plant your palm on the bridge of your guitar. And so I'm still alternate picking because I am always going down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. I'm just skipping. And so you're going to use that for for the verses of So Will I. And I think that's enough for this week to practice. But so you'll start on C major, move to E minor, D major, and then what I'm going to do is send you what chords go where. It's called a tab. I'm going to send you a document so that you can learn how to play it over the week if you want. But yeah, give the song a listen, give it a try to play along, and then experiment with the different chord shapes if you want, because you can play it, like you can make your own songs. I do that all the time with these chords. I might go but I didn't have that pre-planned. I just came up with it. And so try to have fun with it, see if you can experiment a little. But your main goals, just learn how to play So Will I. Learn how to play So Will I. That's your only goal. That was the main point of teaching you these new chord shapes. You can also practice gratitude if you're still working on it. If you're still stuck on gratitude, try to learn how to play gratitude using these chords and then sing it. You gotta sing it. But yeah, that's your lesson. Happy learning, and let me know if there are any songs that you want to learn, any things that you hear about that you or that you have any questions about. After this video, completely feel free to shoot me as many texts as with questions that you have, and I hope you have a great 2 weeks. Have fun.